Welcome back to Arkansas First Reports. I'm your host, Kandi Cox, and today's episode is one that you do not want to miss. We're diving into the front lines of the ballot election issues. It's about integrity. The time, not in a foreign land, but right here in Arkansas. Joining me is retired Army First Sergeant Bryan Norris, a highly decorated combat veteran, civic leader, and one of the most determined voices for citizen-led reform in our state. Bryan's leadership extends far beyond his years in military services in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, and across Europe. He's now leading a different kind of charge, one that defends the most sacred right of every American, the right to vote and to have that vote counted transparently. Bryan spearheaded the first successful countywide petition drive in Arkansas history that put election security directly in the hands of the people. As a result, Independence County became the first known county in the nation where voters got to decide how their ballots would be cast and counted, choosing paper ballots over machines. His efforts didn't stop at the ballot box. When the opposition forces sued to stop the vote, Bryan stood his ground, even taking the fight to the Arkansas Supreme Court. Today, we'll unpack that historical grassroots victory, that the resistance followed, and the troubling legislative efforts like Senator Kim Hammer's so-called Hammer bills that's often referred to here on Arkansas First Reports that threaten to destroy the future of citizen-led petition initiatives in our state. This is more than politics. It's about preserving the voice of the people. So grab your coffee, get ready to take notes, and let's get into the truth that the establishment doesn't want you to hear. Bryan, thank you for joining me today.
Kandi, thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with a little bit of your background in your service history. It's quite impressive.
Yep. Well, it's funny because I never had any intention to join the military. My father served here in Vietnam, and it was never looked at favorably in my household.
Right.
So it was not something I was looking forward to. But during college, I was attending ASU in Jonesboro. 9/11 happened, and I felt the urge. So I thought, why not? I'll just give it a few years. A few years turned into 21, and it was one of the best things that I think a young man could ever do. It's an honor to serve the people of the United States. It's an honor to represent your country in its conflicts, especially when they're for the right reasons. But
Right.
We learn things later. Maybe not so much. Maybe they are. And I had multiple combat deployments to Afghanistan, Iraq. I was able to represent our nation in NATO,
Right.
serving as a foreign exchange officer in the French Rapid Reaction Corps and in Lille, France. And then, I spent 6 years living in Hawaii, which is not a bad gig at all. Lots of training happened in that area, and then closed it out in Germany. So.
Well, I thank you for your service. I come from a family of veterans, and I just appreciate you serving our country. And now you're serving here in our state in a capacity that many of us find ourselves in. You said that you didn't intend to join the service. I didn't intend to get into politics, but having a family of with 7 kids and grandkids,
Awesome.
what I often say is, if not me, then who? And we're fighting for the future of this country and the future of this state. I have a daughter, she's special needs, and I made her recite the preamble to the Constitution yesterday. And as we were going through that, I asked her, what does prosperity mean? And, asking my children, I said, it's, we go back to the war, right? And the founding of our country and the men and women that have died and given their lives for the freedoms that we have today. And we have to carry that on for the future generations. And so we had that discussion last night, and I just appreciate your service. ballots. Um,
Well, thank you. I appreciate your support. We had the United States Armed Forces had the best boss in the world, the American taxpayer, and they basically write a blank check for us for equipment, training to be the absolute best that we can be. They're the best enablers of any profession anywhere I've ever seen, and the end result is the world's finest fighting force that's ever been produced.
right.
But that can't happen without the support from back home. And so I always like to say, when people say thank you for your service, I say, well, thank you for your support and your enablement.
Right, right. So you find yourself here in this battle for election integrity. Um, so for our listeners that are unfamiliar with what happened in Independence County, walk us through how your countywide petition to return to paper ballots began.
Okay. Back to that point a little bit, to the founding that you mentioned, I see us as stewards as well,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
links of a chain that go all the way back to that. And it seems like the further we go, the weaker these links get. And it's because we've forgotten why our founders needed that. And me being in the service and touring different parts of the world, you really do get, you get an understanding for what the founders were talking about, right?
Right.
Like during COVID, when we were living in Germany, there was one point where I had to register with the police to go to the grocery store, and you couldn't even park your vehicle next to another vehicle because it was illegal to do that.
Right.
And you couldn't be with your spouse outside because that was a violation of COVID protocols. They'd give you a 5,000 euro fine. So we really saw how tyrannical governments can be, even when they're trying to be the best interests of everyone at mind, right? Nothing takes away freedom like safety.
Right.
They always want to say safety.
Exactly.
So we came home after 21 years, me and my wife decided to hang it up. And we only to come home after that 25 years, and I realized that we're losing our republic here one vote at a time. If you don't have confidence and trust in your vote, that erodes the foundation of our republic entirely. And from my perspective and what I was looking at is we don't have elections anymore. We have selections,
Yes.
especially in the state of Arkansas. And transparency isn't a luxury in a democracy. It's the foundation of it.
Right.
So when you vote in Arkansas and you're selecting these names and the names are printed out, even if you verify those names, when you run them through the tabulator, it doesn't count what the name is. It counts that barcode.
Right.
And that barcode can be programmed to read and reflect anything. I can't read barcode.
Right.
You can't read barcode.
Exactly.
We're not allowed to see the source code that
Right.
the barcode is using to read what's coming through. So we just throw our vote into this black box and hope that the reader gets it right. And even when we do an audit, the audit is only rechecking what the machine did.
Right.
It's not going through and validating every name selection on the ballot. So we haven't had a full audit. We haven't had a good understanding of the actual intent of the voter in the state of Arkansas since the machines came on.
Right. I remember, and we had a audit, if you would, here in Saline County, because we have those that here that really do not want, as you know, paper ballots. And so they did an audit, and we had them come and tell us that the audit was 100% accurate. And so my question was 100% accurate of what it counted the first time, because it's just rereading what it did. We just don't know what it read.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the problem.
And the other problem is these machines, like I said, they're black boxes.
Right.
Built with foreign parts and secret codes.
Yes.
And that's one thing that a lot of people don't understand either, is a lot of the components in these voting machines are manufactured by adversarial nations. I have a problem with that.
Right.
We learned in other conflicts around the world that adversarial nations are very sophisticated at creating backdoors and infrastructure in other nations. We recently learned that China has built backdoors into our electric grid. This administration come out. If they're able to build a backdoor in our election grid by building components that we utilize over here. Why couldn't they do the same in our election machines?
Right.
I mean, they're very sophisticated. They're very capable. They could do it where, it's very hard for us to know and tell. And I like to take away, when it comes to something like that, take away all the opportunities for that. Searcy County recently went to hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballots. And I encourage everyone to go online and look at their last election, because every part of it was videotaped.
Yes.
You can go and watch in real time every ballot being taken out and being counted under camera and validated multiple times as it's going down the line. No one could look at that election and say that the correct winner wasn't chosen from that county.
Right.
You just can't. So, we wouldn't let a bank count our cash behind a curtain.
Right.
So why do we let machines count our votes for the republic that determine our republic behind a curtain, which is essentially what they're doing.
Yes.
Searcy County was open and transparent where everyone could go and see it. It's recorded for posterity.
Right.
So at any point in time, anybody can go back and look at it. Why don't we want the same everywhere? I don't understand the issue with that.
Right. Right. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced during the petition process, both from the officials and within the community?
Great question, because it was unexpected. I'm detached, right? I had just gotten to Arkansas after retiring. So when you come detached, you don't have all the baggage that comes with being in the middle of something for a long period of time. I can't see the forest for the trees.
Right.
As soon as this was brought up, I saw the reaction, and it was very surprising that the negative reaction was coming so vehemently from the elected officials.
Right.
And I was like, well, why, if that's what the people want and you're a representative of the people, why aren't you enabling them, or at least allowing their voices to be heard instead of just shutting them down, which is exactly what they were trying to do to us. But we had a group and we started meeting. We came up with a plan and we started executing that plan. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, in this process, I got turned on to a man named Colonel Conrad Reynolds.
Yes.
And without him and Clint Lancaster, we wouldn't have been in compliance with law because of the way that we were collecting signatures and going about it. The signature sheets weren't exactly correct. We didn't know all the processes. So they really lined us out, and they gave us some tips and tricks that really paid dividends down the road. For example, we asked to see people's IDs. If they were willing to it, they would show us their IDs, and we put a little asterisk next to that person that showed it, saying we took that extra measure. And when we did all that, turned it in, immediately they filed a lawsuit against us. And if it hadn't have been for Conrad and AVII, Arkansas Voter Integrity Initiative, and Clint Lancaster, we would have stopped there. It would have been dead because we didn't have the funds to continue that fight in court. But they took that effort up for us on behalf of the people of Independence County, and had the suit in district court, which we won. And then
let me ask you this. Let me stop you right there. So when you were going through this process, one of the things that we had a hard time with here in Saline County, and I want to see if this is something that you faced on the front end in your county, was that, the Saline County Republican Committee, basically begged the JPs to meet with Colonel Conrad Reynolds and listen to him. And they were by far uninterested in even hearing one thing that he had to say. They would just shut it down. Did you guys face any of that with your JPs? And
we did it. We did it in different ways. He's surprised. He was a guest speaker for one of our committee meetings.
Right. We had him too. Yeah.
There were some that were there, not all. There were some were there. And it was at the stage where we hadn't decided to move forward with the petition process yet. So the elected officials didn't see a threat looking back in hindsight.
Right.
But once we began the process and we're getting traction and success, we then invited Colonel Conrad Reynolds and Dr. Appel to come and give a speak. Not one elected official from Independence County showed up.
Right.
And
That's very similar to what we did,
not one.
and the same reaction, and we even asked for them, because they many of them were there when Colonel Conrad Reynolds came the first time,
Mhm.
heading back.
Yep.
No one, none of the elected officials show up. We asked them to meet with him just as the JPs and they could ask him questions. We've asked them to meet with him one-on-one, and we just continually hit a brick wall because the fact of the matter is they just didn't care. They don't
They don't.
want the paper ballots.
They don't care because when people get too close to real accountability,
Right.
our own officials, and proof is in the pudding,
Yes.
will fight you all the way to the Arkansas State Supreme Court.
Yes.
And to me, that's very telling,
Yes.
which is what they did to us.
Yeah.
Once we won in district court, the county attorney, Daniel Haney, and him specifically, mentioned that he wasn't going to take it any farther.
Mhm.
And I believe the county clerk didn't really want to go any farther anyway. But something changed. And then they went from, okay, we're over, we're done, we're going to move forward, to we're going to appeal it to the state Supreme Court. Again, Clint Lancaster represented us, and he represented us fantastically well. If you read his letters and his points that he's making in it, what was honest. It's really hard to fight honesty when
That's right.
and what's right.
That's right.
And at the end of the day, if the people rule, and this is something that the people want, why are you fighting so hard against them having it as their representatives? So are you representing us, or are you ruling us?
Right.
And that kind of became the mantra throughout the whole thing, and it got very ugly really quick.
Mhm.
So when we were waiting for the court date in district court, I asked Clint, I was like, should I FOIA? What do you think about me FOIAing the local officials? He was like, do it. Why not? And that turned into be very telling as well. Through the FOIAs, when we started peeling the onion back a little bit, we realized that this was a concerted effort across all the counties and even the state in Arkansas, being led by the Arkansas Association of Counties.
Mhm.
A 501c3 organization was telling county clerks how to dismiss these petitions and to play it out down the road. So initially, they were directing these counties, hey, we've got word that they're using out-of-state canvassers. We're going to use the out-of-state canvassers as a reason to not certify the petition and push it off and make them fight us for it again. We suspect that they'll probably win that battle. And in 26, we're going to attack the ballot title, call it insufficient, and then we'll kick it down to 28. And then in the meantime, we'll have the legislator work on some things, which we later learned worked on very well.
What's domicile and residence?
Exactly, right? And so these emails showed them specifically telling these county clerks how to fight it. And our county clerk, Tracy Mitchell, immediately after we turned it in, she emailed the county attorney, Daniel Haney, and she said, it looks like our group didn't use out-of-state canvassers to the extent that we thought. I'm afraid they're going to have enough legitimate signatures, right? Just think about the word, the language there, right?
Right.
Daniel Haney responded immediately. What looks like we're going to have to attack the ballot now. And that's what they did. They said our ballot title was insufficient. The ballot title was the hand-marked and hand-counted paper ballot initiative of 24.
Yes.
They said that was insufficient. And correctly, the judge and the district judge ruled, no, that is a sufficient title. But thankfully, the judge gave 72 hours for the clerks to certify. And that's important because within that 72-hour period, there's an Arkansas law that would have gone into effect if they'd have waited the maximum amount of time. It wouldn't have allowed us to be able to vote on it in 24. We would have had to wait till 26 because it didn't get submitted early enough.
Right.
Our Independence County Tracy Mitchell, she did the right thing and certified it quickly after the ruling. Cleburne County and other counties did not. They waited the maximum amount of time, then certified it, but couldn't be on the ballot because it wasn't submitted in a timely fashion, which again is very telling that you're willing, what lengths are these elected officials willing to go to?
Right.
So, our tax dollars were used to sue us all the way. And the only recourse we had was to spend even more money to fight that fight. Thankfully, there was people willing to help us in that and do the effort and the work on behalf of the people to just let us have our say at the ballot box.
Right. Right. It's amazing to me, and I want to touch on this probably in a little later, but just when you look at Arkansas on paper, people think that we're the reddest state in the nation, and that couldn't be furthest from the truth based upon all the things that we see, especially with this legislative session. And so you guys fight this. You fight it to the Supreme Court. Where did it stand?
The Supreme Court ruled in our favor,
Uh-huh.
thankfully, and we got to put it on a ballot. And so when ballot time came, and then began like a really nasty campaign from the elected officials. Our county chairman is a guy named Cody Smith. Cody Smith his family owns all the advertising billboards in the area. And billboards are not that expensive, especially the electronic ones. And we were going to try to advertise our position on these. Well, we weren't allowed to, right? We weren't, but they had opposition signs on everywhere in Batesville and surrounding areas. And so we were like, well, how are we going to get the word out? Well, Conrad and his team had these vans, these big vans that were basically mobile billboards.
Yes.
And they despise these things.
Oh, you saw them coming.
Yes. And we parked them around town, legally where it was appropriate. And they routinely called the police on us. We had the police coming by and they would say, look, guys, we're sorry you're in the right, but we got to come by because we keep getting calls. When we parked them at the community center where it was early voting, but it's public parking, people were losing their minds over that. We were getting very wild things being, very unchristian language being thrown in our direction because of this. Like you saw that. And I sat back and wondered, like, why is there such hatred over this one issue?
Yes.
Like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up. And again, from an outsider's perspective, to me, as a military guy, looking at a map, if you've got 3 Ranger battalions and a tank brigade circling a little area, well, that's something that they really want to protect, right? That's a lot of firepower. That's what this looked like to me. It's like, man, you guys, you put the 82nd Airborne around this, the 101st is in reserve, and you got tank brigades roving security around this, these machines. Why?
Why? What is the purpose of that? It really just makes you wonder, doesn't it? How do going through this process and going to the Supreme Court, winning there, how have the citizens of Independence County responded with all of this?
One was kind of dismay. Like after we started doing polling to kind of get an idea of where the vote would go.
Right.
And when we were polling, we were just talking to people. I mean, we're regular people. We're your neighbors. We're fathers. We're wives. We're dads. We're, we're husbands, all these things. And we're having these conversations. And that was the very common thing is like, why did they sue you? Like people were disgusted.
Yeah.
That they were willing to sue a citizen-led effort all the way to the state Supreme Court. One that overwhelmingly people wanted, and so are you representing us or are you ruling us?
That's right. That's right. Let me ask you this. I'm just curious, how do you feel that the local and statewide media responded to your efforts? And do you feel that there was fair coverage in that?
No, that was my very first experience with mainstream media on any real way. And I learned some lessons, absolutely learned some lessons. I always tell myself, like, I'm going to learn lessons and not just identify them. Right. And I learned some lessons when it comes to dealing with the media during that time period. One really sticks out is KAIT 8 News out of Jonesboro came to do an interview with me. And during the interview, we were there for over 45 minutes and we discussed all types of things. And I really hit some home runs talking point wise during that.
Right.
I was just in a good state. The clips that they chose they weren't bad, but they definitely didn't highlight any good from paper ballots. But then when they interviewed Daniel Haney, it was very crisp, clear. He hit all of his points. And what was concerning to me, what aggravated me about it is every point that they highlighted he made, I discussed plenty of counters to those points, but they didn't show those.
Right.
And then they wouldn't come back and talk to me again about it. They wouldn't answer any of my press releases. They wouldn't answer any of my communications. They just wouldn't correspond with me at all. White River News Now in Batesville wouldn't communicate with me about it, wouldn't do an interview with me about it, but they did, the election commissioners. And then KIT tried to do like a undercover of some volunteers that we had out there just educating people as they were going by. The election commission officials made complaints that these volunteers were chasing people on their way to go and vote, which is illegal, of course.
Right.
But these volunteers were not doing that. They were behind a table at an appropriate legal distance from the interest. And we were just saying, would you like to have some information on the paper ballot initiative? If people said no, they kept walking. If not, so they go to do this hit piece and they're filming them, from a hidden camera, and they went ahead and published this video, but they tried to make it look as much as they could as it was nefarious, like trouble and they shooting. But of course, we weren't doing anything untoward. It was all for naught, but it really showed the lengths that they'll go to. The only organization that gave us a platform during that time was Conduit. And they allowed us to come on and say our piece about what we were doing. But everyone else was knives out. And again, why?
Why? Well, after the vote seceded, what kind of changes do you see in your county? You see any roadblocks?
We did hear that the quorum court could be looking at a way to not do it, but that seems to have dissipated, and that could have been just a rumor. It was right after. It could have been just maybe a hurt feelings thing going around. But from our last Republican Party meeting, the county clerk said that they were doing paper ballots and they're getting ready and prepared for it. They haven't reached out to us for help because we did volunteer to help them out. We don't want to fight for a change and just leave them hanging at all.
Right.
I mean, we're there to work with you. You can have personality issues with anyone all day long, but we can still work together. That's what communities are supposed to. That's what families do.
I say all the time, it's principle over personality.
Yeah. I mean, you're all going in the same direction. You may not love sitting in the next seat to them, but it's not forever. You're there to accomplish a goal and then move on about your way. And I don't know if they've reached out to Searcy County to get some tips and tricks from them on there. So I hope they are utilizing the resources. I hope they're being prepared as possible to give the best result to the people of Independence County, because that's what we deserve.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we know, because we've talked about this throughout this time together already, that this was a citizen-led effort.
Yeah.
Right. So taking that, let's talk about the hammer bills. Let's turn our focus towards the hammer bills that were pushed by Senator Kim Hammer. In your opinion, how did these bills, how are they designed to undermine the citizen-led petition drives?
Well, they didn't pass those bills to stop any fraud.
Right.
They passed those bills to stop us.
Yes.
Specifically, because of how successful we were in this process. And I think it's important to note that Senator Hammer is running for Secretary of State.
It's very important to note that.
And all of these that he passed gave power to the Secretary of State, which he is hoping to assume those powers and responsibilities. And one of them was, thankfully it failed, but would have created a police force.
Yes.
Under the authority of the Secretary of State.
Yes.
That is very troubling to me, that a man that's running for a powerful position wants to authorize his own Gestapo to work for him, to investigate petitions. And, when just by investigating people and going out, it's very uncomfortable for that individual. It's harassment. It's unwarranted. It's unnecessary. If someone's breaking the law, they need to be held accountable. But having a police force at your disposal to just say, I want you to investigate them to see if they did anything wrong in their petition. Like, how far were they going to be allowed to take it? Like, that was very eye-opening to me.
Yeah.
It was very, very concerning.
It
And
was,
so,
I tell you what was really disheartening to me with these bills was, I own an adoption agency. I'm very active in the pro-life movement. I have been very active in the pro-life movement since 1997. Um, what was really disheartening to me in this is there was a petition that was a citizen-led petition that was going around to get abortion back on the ballot. And in that, we saw things that the other side, gathering the signatures, did that were very troublesome and misleading. But I think, well, who approved the ballot title?
yeah,
Who approved that? So, we can't really complain about their ballot title when it was approved by the Secretary of State, right? And so I believe that petition drive was used um, to drive a passion for people to come behind
absolutely.
Hammer, because he utilized their passion and their frustration to get them on board to support these bills because he doesn't want paper ballots.
Absolutely. He does.
And so he manipulated that situation for his benefit. I truly believe that. And what's really disheartening to me is that they fell for it.
Yep.
And we are hindering what we may want to do in the future as citizen-led petitions, as conservatives, right? And you fell into the palm of his hand in the deceitfulness to get behind him and support these bills when he was just using you, because it really comes down to he does not want paper ballots.
You were so spot on.
Yeah.
I spoke to many legislators asking them to vote against it. And you saw even the Arkansas Family Council came out in support of it.
Yes, they did.
And they have used the citizen-led petition very well to get
Yes.
things passed across the state. And now all of a sudden they're supporting removing it.
Yes.
And they all said, it's about the abortion. It's about abortion. It's about abortion. It's about abortion. To which I replied, if you want, as a legislature, want to do something about abortion, you have that power already.
That's right.
Focus it on that effort. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You're sacrificing my liberties, my freedom, because we won one county and the state slams the door on everyone else forever from being able to do that. Like,
that whole situation was weaponized.
yes.
And, again, I've been in the fight for pro-life for a long time. And it really bothered my spirit to see those that are in the pro-life community that came out in support and family council support of the Hammer bills. And one of the things that within that, when you're the problems that were caught in that process, right? They were handled appropriately. So the laws were followed to handle those things that were not done right. So now why are we going and taking the rights of citizens away and making it more difficult for citizen-led initiatives? I just, through that whole thing, I was just in disbelief about the people who came out in support of these bills.
If they can strip our ability to petition today,
Yes.
they can strip our voice tomorrow and down the road.
And I think that you'll agree with me. Again, very pro-life here. I do not want abortion in Arkansas.
No.
At all.
Ever.
But I will defend your right to fight for what you believe is right.
Absolutely.
Now,
I did.
exactly.
I did for over 20 years.
Exactly.
And would do it again.
I don't like it, but it's your right as a citizen because we are a republic, to fight for those things and let the people's voice be heard. I don't believe that if it had gotten on the ballot that it would have passed.
No.
Not in Arkansas. It would have never passed. But you have the right to fight for it to be on the ballot, just as I have a right to fight against it.
Absolutely. And the short-sightedness and the inability of these elected officials to see the second and third order consequences and effects of these laws that they're passing is mind-boggling to me.
Yes.
They're not always going to be in power. At some point down the road, another party or an opposition group is going to get enough seats. It's going to, the only constant in our history is change.
That's right.
Republicans are not forever going to run the state of Arkansas. And guess what? Now they got these new powers, new authorities, and the Secretary of State can just decertify every citizen-led petition for whatever reason, willy-nilly, going on throughout the state, but then support other ones in circumventing the legislature through the citizen-led petition, because that's what these bills really do.
Yes.
They allow the Secretary of State to select winning petitions across the state, and at his discretion, just throw away the ones that he doesn't want.
Right.
Right? It's an end run around the legislative process, and that's what people didn't see coming during this. They looked at the abortion issue. They said, okay, we're going to stop abortion forever. It's never going to be able to happen. Yeah, as long as you got a Secretary of State that's willing to exercise that jurisprudence on those petition processes coming through, absolutely. Stop whatever he wants to. But what if you get one that wants abortion?
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. We failed to remember it wasn't too long ago when Arkansas was not a Republican state.
Well, I wonder if we are right now, but that's
Well,
a story.
we may touch on that, but yeah, exactly. But people need to remember, it's going back to what you were talking about earlier. We have to remember the past so that we can.
Well, it's not about party.
No.
It's about power.
Yes.
Who holds it and who's willing to give it back to the people, right? And we've seen that this state legislature and Senator Kim Hammer they want to be omnipotent, right? They want to have the power.
Yes.
They don't want to give it back to the people.
Yes.
And that, to me, that's troublesome.
Yes.
I can't vote for an individual like that.
I agree. Yeah. So when we're looking at these bills, these slew of bills that he put forward, one of the things I think about, and I've said multiple times within Arkansas First Reports on our podcast, and I've also talked about at the Capitol in my live streams. But one of the things I keep going back to is, as someone who has participated in gathering those signatures, as someone who has signed petitions, number one, it is up to me as an individual to educate myself. When I go to the ballot box to vote, no one is standing there beside me reading that ballot to me and making sure that I understand it. It is upon me to go in and select and make choices based upon how I'm educated and what I believe in. And now we have where I have to be read to. That's a problem. Number one, some of these ballot initiatives are 8 minutes long.
Or longer.
A page or more, right? I'm not going to stand and let someone read to me.
One of the legislators that I spoke to told me, and I'm not going to mention his name, but he told me, he's like, we just can't trust the voter to make good decisions.
Yeah. That's a problem.
I don't subscribe to that fact.
Yeah.
I think one, citizen-led petitions at the lowest level possible is the best way to govern. Like, your city council that's direct affected, your local school board running your schools, your county quorum court running the counties, like that's right near to you. You should be able to affect that immediately and make positive change in your area. The trouble is that from the top down, these organizations have been infiltrated.
Yes.
The federal school Department of Education is telling your local school what to do. You don't even really have a say that much anymore. And the Arkansas Association Counties, with influence from the National Association of Counties, is directly telling your county committee what to do in your local area, and you're paying them to do it.
Right.
1% of all tax revenue of every county goes to the Arkansas Association of Counties. So it's like an HOA.
Mhm.
We're funding an organization to tell us what to do,
Yes.
and they're not listening to us.
Right. Right. The other thing is, I think about as someone who has been the one gathering, signatures. I don't want to read to someone.
No,
And then
and see, and
and
their
then
ID.
and ask them for their ID. Number one, I'm not going to give my ID to someone. Uh, I don't want to be asked for my ID. But if I'm the one that's gathering the signatures, right? I'm out
Mhm.
there. I'm the canvasser. Now I can have someone file a complaint that I did not read to them.
Mhm. And you got to prove you did. How do you do it?
Exactly. How do you do that?
Yeah,
And
you can't.
that's problematic.
Yeah, but think about it. If I come to you and I say, we got a petition for the dog catcher has to catch dogs, but he can't catch them on Sunday, right?
Mhm.
Read you the petition. Takes 4 minutes. Can I see your ID? Okay, you let me see your ID. Now I got to warn you, under penalty of law, it is a felony in Arkansas to not represent yourself appropriately when you sign this. Do you want to sign? Like, no. I'm. Who are you? First of all, I don't really know you. You don't have a badge, and now they don't know this. But don't we also have to get if you're going to petition, don't you have to get a background investigation done? Check. I think you do now, according to one of the laws that passed.
Mm.
Who pays for that?
Mhm.
So now I've got to pay to have a background check done on me before I go out and spend my own fuel money, my own time. The whole thing was designed to keep you from wanting to do it. You just took away the will.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we wanna rule at the house, right?
Right. But even after you do all that, let's say that you did all of that, right? And you were successful and you got enough. The Secretary of State can still say, based on a preponderance of evidence,
Exactly.
I deem this petition invalid.
Yes.
Well, what does that mean? What's your evidence? Well, I had people come tell me that they signed it and they weren't of your county.
Mhm.
I had people tell me that you weren't asking to see their ID. That's my evidence. Anyone could. I could write a note saying, "Hey, that law to make alcohol legal in Independence County, make it a wet county. I'm not from Independence County, and I signed it,
Mhm.
and so did my entire family.
Right.
See you later.
That's right.
Nice try."
It's giving so much power and authority to the Secretary of State. Um, and as you mentioned before, we have Senator Kim Hammer, who is gonna be running for the Secretary of State.
Yeah, trying to give himself all that power.
Yeah,
It's telling.
it
Like
is.
I had power in the military and authority and stuff over people, and it it's it will illuminate your character defects immediately.
Yes.
You can't hide from it,
Right.
and there sometimes, I may not have been the absolute best at every instance that I was, but I tried to exercise humility, look myself in the mirror, and improve along the way.
Mhm.
And in doing so, I had to swallow some hard truths. And I think Senator Hammer needs to exercise the man in the mirror, exercise. He needs to go and look himself in the mirror and logically talk himself through the things that he done. And then at the end of it, ask himself with a straight face, are you in favor for the people and representing them? Or are you trying to satisfy the establishment and grow your own wealth and grow your own power?
Mhm.
And I wonder what his answer, if he's being honest to
If he's
himself.
being honest, and that's the big part, right? Can we
Well,
be honest with ourselves? So what do you see as, talking to everyday Arkansans, about getting involved to defend their constitutional right to petition and demand transparent elections in our state?
sadly, people feel defeated.
I'm seeing that a lot right now.
Honest.
People are truly,
People are checking out of the Republican Party,
yeah. So,
counties, district.
I mean,
They don't want to go and vote anymore.
right.
You know?
Because they don't feel that their voices are being heard,
Yeah.
right?
One of them said to me, which is I had to agree with. It's like, look, we were successful and did this, and they saw that we were successful, and so they just plugged that gap and said, well, thanks for playing. You got over this time. It's one county. We'll figure out how to get that county not to be able to use machines down the road. I mean, look at what they're doing to Searcy County. They have been harassing Searcy County ever since they went to paper ballots. They've been threatening them. They've been putting obstacles in front of them. They've been harassing them nonstop. And I don't blame county clerks and quorum courts for not wanting to deal with that. Cleburne caved. Their quorum court passed paper ballot initiative, and they got so much pressure and harassment that they was like, okay, it's not worth the struggle. The squeeze isn't worth the juice.
Right.
So who is this? Who are these people that think that that's okay?
Right. I recently did a podcast with a gentleman named Aaron, and he moved here from Washington State around the going through COVID, and he was telling me that when he was looking at picking up his family and moving, because the COVID restrictions were so bad there, he said that it was important to him that they go to a state where all three branches were Republican, and he goes, and it landed us here in Arkansas. He had all these different checklists that he was looking for, but that was one of them. And he said, now that we're here, we've been here for a few years. He goes, this is far from a red state.
Far from it. And a lot of people don't realize that. My wife is a California refugee, is what I call her. She's from Northern California. Beautiful place. Her family were, of the farming type up there, so they were conservative. And her entire family, except for one brother, has left that state, fleeing from it. And they, my in-laws now live in Batesville as well to be closer to grandkids. But a big part of it was they wanted freedom. They wanted their liberties back.
Right.
And they get here and they start seeing some of these things and they're like, what the heck? And I said, I have to agree with you. I'm from Arkansas, but I hadn't lived in this state in over 20 years traveling the world. I thought just like you thought. And I sought refuge in this state,
right?
Because I value freedom. I value my liberty. I want a faith-based environment for my kids to grow up with Judeo-Christian values and character and morals and discipline, and to be in a like-minded community like that.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I have to agree with them. It's a hard realization to get to, and I don't think, I don't necessarily think they're Democrats. I don't think there's a lot of elected officials in Arkansas that doesn't care about the party at all.
Right.
They just want the prestige, the position, and the power that comes along with it. And I've seen that all over the world. That's a common trait,
right,
around the world. And it's also true in the military. You get people that eventually stop focusing on warfighting, lethality, and the betterment of their troops, and they start focusing on what's the next hole in my ticket to punch as I climb the ranks to get to the SAR major position or to get to the generalship position, whatever it is. And when I would interact with local elected officials, whether it was in Hawaii or in Texas or in Tennessee at Fort Campbell or in Belgium or in France or Germany, Indo-PACOM area, you would always see that these elected officials would just look at you as an opportunity to move up or advance themselves. And once that opportunity was done, they would shun you aside and move on to the next thing.
Right.
It's kind of disgusting.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with this in your county, but we definitely dealt with it in our county before it was dissolved. But we would have those that were either elected officials or those that were running, right? And, you look at the Republican platform, and my belief system aligns with the Republican platform. And so that excites me, right? But when you would have these officials or those that were running come and you ask them very specific questions about the Republican platform, such as closed primaries, right? That's just one example. They don't even know that it's part of the Republican platform.
Yep. Don't care.
They don't know, and they don't care.
Yep.
That's exactly right. And I wonder.
And when it works to the people's advantage, they just hold a closet meeting of executive committees and negate whatever it is the people wanted, which was in the party rules,
Right.
and change the rules and just move the goalpost and
Right.
and carry on.
And
doing
you
whatever
get
they
a
want
lot
to
of
do.
you get a lot of fluff conversations like, "Oh, I didn't know that that was in there. I guess I need to go research that and I'll get back to you." And well, they never get back to you because they're not held to being accountable to that, right?
Yeah.
And then I was wondering, and I'm one of those that I just kind of look at the big picture and I try to put the puzzle pieces together. And one of the things that I was thinking about, over the last couple weeks is, especially ending of legislative session, is when you look at those that are in power, those that seek power,
Mhm.
right? And I'm looking at the Republican platform. I'm looking at what happened here in Saline County with them dissolving our county, with them, removing Jennifer Lancaster for 20 years and not following the rules.
Yeah.
They did not follow the rules. And
Rules for thee, but not for me.
right. And I go, okay, had the RPA, the executive committee of the RPA, had they been held accountable and the people truly spoke up against what was going on, would we have seen some things differently within the legislative session?
Great question.
Because if those that are in power, the executive committee, can get away with not following the rules and putting their thumb down over you, right?
Who's going to hold them accountable, though?
Right.
That's the
The
problem.
people, right?
But how? What's the vehicle? When you look at one of the things that's kind of illuminating in this aspect is internationally, right? Let's look at international.
Mhm.
The military is politics.
Right,
It's an instrument when talks fail.
right.
It's still politics. Louis the 16th had an engraving on his cannons that said, "The last argument of kings."
Yes.
Right? And that's a form of politics. At at this level where we are, we don't have a military. We don't have a force and function. I mean, we have the ballot box, but that's 2 years away.
Right.
And the attention span of the American voter is about 15 seconds, it seems like these days. So,
Well,
what,
isn't it these small incremental wins? Like if you take what happened with the RPA, you just ask, well, who would hold them accountable? Well, isn't it the people of the RPA, those that the state, committee, they're the ones that make the rules,
Yeah.
right?
They just ignore them.
But they ignore them. So not only do they are the ones that hold the power, but where was the outcry from the people to hold them accountable? Because I think when we get this, well, I think when we don't speak up and we don't defend and we get tired, like we were just talking about, people are just disgusted and tired at what they're seeing. And we kind of throw in the towel. I feel like we're a society that throws in the towel way too soon. When we just get tired and discuss, it's like, what is it worth to fight? And so it does take, some strong people to lead that, to keep people. I'm constantly trying to encourage people in our county, stay the course, stay the course. Don't let this be a distraction. They want it to be a distraction.
Of course.
And so I think about those that were silent with all this with the RPA, those that did not stand up and let their voices be heard. I know many are regretting that they did not. Many are still confused as to all that happened. Many are just disgusted and tired. But had there been accountability there, I just wonder how that would have translated into this legislative session.
Well, it definitely would have translated over because people, Jordan Peterson has a great spiel where he talks about how did you get to where you are, right?
Right.
As a society. And he's like, well, it got to because I pushed on you a little bit and you didn't say anything. And so I waited and then I pushed a little bit farther.
Yes.
And again, you didn't say anything and I waited. So then I again pushed a little bit harder. And finally you looked around and it's like, well, how did I get way over here?
Right.
Right. And the aspect, it's very interesting because I think a lot of people actually were voicing their opinions,
Mm-hmm.
but they were siloed.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a rallying cry around it,
Right.
to amplify it. And
Yes.
people that live out in, the North Central Ozarks or the Northern Ozarks or out in the farmland of the Delta, if you're just one person out there making a call and a complaint and no one shares it,
Right.
no one talks about it except for your small little circle, you kind of feel like, well, this is all for naught. Nobody's paying attention to me,
Mm-hmm.
because the media is not going to amplify that voice.
Oh, absolutely not.
They're going to censor us
Yes.
that are talking in favor of those things. So that voice is not getting amplified as well. I see the frustration. We've got to figure out a way. And Trump did this.
Mm-hmm.
Trump was not liked by anyone, to include the Republicans. He's
Right.
still not liked by the Republicans, I
Right.
think.
Agree.
I think it's the MAGA party versus the Republican Party in a lot of respects. But because of his persona, him having money, him having assets, he was able to overcome that.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is where we can point to success. The people are with us.
Yeah.
The majority of the people are with us.
Agree.
We just have to find a way to coalesce that power and take control back
Right.
from these individuals. And that's what they're really worried about, because they know that if we give the people an opportunity to choose, they're not going to choose them.
Right.
Which is why I don't think we've had fair elections in Arkansas for a long time. I think we have had selections.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what
That's
they
what I'm
want to keep.
saying. To me, it all ties together.
Mhm.
And when there's no accountability over here within the party,
Right.
then you have those
Well,
representatives.
who runs the party?
Exactly.
Sarah Sanders is running the party.
Exactly. Yeah.
She's gotten and directing them.
Yes. There's no way that you shut down a committee, the largest in the state, that's making the most noise and that's making the most headway without Sarah Sanders.
There's always multiple ways to deal with a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leader, you got to discern what is the appropriate way to deal with it when they arise, and weigh those options. And I had a commander one time, and we would used to sit back and joke and say, we could hand him solution A, which is a clear, good solution to the problem, or solution B, which is a crap solution to the, why? Because it's obviously a crap solution to the problem. And every time he would pick option B, right? And to me, that seemed like the podium gate.
Yeah.
When about her reaction to dealing with the pushback on the podium issue was to attack FOIA.
Right.
That's about the worst path you could take in that regard. And her reaction with the state committee and how the people decided to take control and say, we want closed primaries and we want what you don't want. Her reaction was, well, we're just going to disregard everything they wanted and rewrite the rule book no matter what. And then their reaction to Saline County having the issues that it was having, we'll just dismiss it. And it looks like they're going to do the same thing to Craig County.
That's
potentially.
what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Which is, the issue in Saline County, if people are the issue, you deal with the people.
Is that
you don't punish everyone.
There was never a complaint filed against the county. There was never a complaint filed against the county.
No, it was individuals.
It was individuals. It was actually the executive committee.
Yeah.
And so that it's just very telling to me that within the complaint that's filed against the executive committee, our whole committee gets dissolved and Jennifer gets kicked out.
Well, it sends a message too. It's a shot across the bow to the rest of the state.
Right.
If you don't toe the line and you don't kowtow to the new order and do what we want, we will eliminate you.
Yes.
You won't exist as an entity anymore.
Right. And that's exactly what they're trying to do, right?
That's what they did.
Yeah. I mean, they did that in Saline, but they're trying to do that in Craighead as well.
They're doing it across, and you can see they did it. It's like censorship.
Mm-hmm.
Like YouTube can do censorship, Facebook can do censorship. They can do it overtly or inadvertently by not amplifying your message, and shadow banning is what they call it.
You march to our drum, or we're getting ready.
And what they've done is they've had these. They now have these county committee chairmen self-censoring.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not talking anymore.
Right.
And I've been traveling the state a lot here recently, attending county Republican meetings and discussing with their chairmen and emails and things back and forth. And that's very common. They'll say, this is me privately, this is me publicly,
Yeah.
and this is what I'm willing to put up with and tolerate. And a lot of them were saying, I'm not going to fundraise for the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, one of the things that we could.
Don't want to feed the machine.
Well, you know, it's also very telling. And the two biggest donors to the Republican Party last year was who? Right?
Right.
Their two checks alone accounted for more than every other individual contribution to the Republican Party combined.
Yeah.
So what'd you buy with that? It's a lot of money at stake. And that's also to the machines. Put yourself in this perspective, the voting machines. If there's a bag full of $10,000 sitting next to you, you know it's not yours, but if you just tell one little lie, you can get away with it.
Right.
How many people would tell that one little lie to keep that $10,000? A lot of people would be willing to sacrifice their character on just one little lie to keep that money, right? I mean, unfortunately, that's the truth. These machines can determine the outcome of billions.
Right.
Billions of dollars, right? Because once they guarantee you in, and they can guarantee you re-election, and someone comes to you and says, hey, we want X, Y, and Z. Maybe we want $1 billion prison built in Franklin County.
Right.
And I own a construction company, and we're going to get $600 million of that $1 billion. You're going to vote for it.
Right.
You're going to push it. You're going to do whatever. I'm not saying that that's happening, but I mean, why would, if you could, would you not, if you could influence the exchange of billions of dollars, what links would you go to pull those levers?
Right. Right.
And if you look at the national level,
that's not,
trillions.
we know that that's not a dead issue.
No.
Not by a long shot.
No. And that's another thing too that you have to look at. Why are you pushing so hard on from that perspective? Nobody wants it. It failed multiple times, but you're still driving forward with it. Right. Just like the paper ballot initiative.
Yes.
Suing us all the way to the Supreme Court, coming back to the legislative session and making it impossible for anyone to move down that road again and be successful. You took the opportunity away from the people.
Right.
And you're saying, well, I don't care what everyone wants. I'm just going to do this anyway.
Right.
And that's what they're doing.
Yep.
Sad state of affairs. And another thing that bothers me as a veteran as well is if I was to decide to run for office, I couldn't use my title as to have my name on the ballot. But if someone had a nickname that was, my nickname's Colonel, they could put Colonel on there as a nickname, right? But because I earned mine in combat, I can't do that, right? Colonel Conrad Reynolds couldn't do it, but he could say my nickname's General,
right?
But that, you know, it's stolen valor,
right?
But he could do that and have it on there. But a state senator can, state representatives can, the governor can on ballots moving forward. Why do they not want veterans to be able to use the titles that they earned in combat if they choose to run for office?
That's a very good question. Something for our listeners to really think about.
But I can use a fake name.
Yes.
Yeah. All day long. And in fact, people can make fun of military titles and put them on a ballot when they're not earned. But someone that earned it can't. Yep.
That's pretty disgusting, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't like it. Not a fan.
No, not a fan of that at all. Well, I would like for you to leave our listeners with your last thoughts on these paper ballot initiatives, how they can get involved, and what they need to do.
Well, I spent 21 years fighting for freedom abroad to come home to realize and look at the situation that potentially we're losing it. And so I did what I can control, and I started with the end in mind. And the end was to give the people more freedom and power over how their elections are handled.
Right.
And so we got active, and we didn't take no for an answer, and we figured it out. We came up with a plan and figured it out. Now, I'm not a politician. I'm a father. I'm a husband.
Right.
I'm a veteran, but I'm not done serving. Right. I wanted to continue and help and support my local community. And that's what people at the grassroots have got to do. Arkansas deserves leaders who answer to the people,
Yes.
right? Not just party insiders.
Right.
And you've got to take a stand and be that single pebble in a shoe that just doesn't go away. You're constantly there, and you don't take no for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Keep pushing back and realize that they may have won this legislative session. They may have won at the executive committee takeaway. Look at them and say, good, good. Because you know what? I just learned something. I learned that I will never vote for you again. I learned that I will never support you again. I've learned that I am going to voice my opinion on every platform until my voice goes out to tell people what you really did and who you really are. And when the moment comes that we get power, we're going to exercise it to levels that's going to be written in history books about what we do to take this away from you and your ability to ever influence the decisions that this state goes again, because it's not your fiefdom.
Right.
The people rule. It's our legacy. It's our future. It's our children, not your pocketbook, which is all you seem to care about.
Right.
So get up, get active, get involved, and do something.
I mean, that's where Arkansas First was born from, was the actions that were taken.
Right.
To get the truth out.
Exactly. You have to.
And to hold people accountable.
Perseverance will prevail.
Yes.
God willing. It always will. I've a lot of things that I've done in my military career and in my life that I wouldn't have been successful if I hadn't just been too stubborn to quit.
Yeah.
And it can be a downside sometimes, I freely admit, but I'm very stubborn. I'm very hard-headed. And when I get onto something, I don't want to let it go. And that's kind of the way we have to be right now, especially when it comes to our freedoms.
Yes.
We look at, you have to ask permission to fish. You have to ask permission to hunt. You have to ask permission to drive a vehicle. You have to ask permission to build a shed in your backyard.
It's insane.
Ask permission, ask. And then I'm paying you to tell me what to do over and over. And we got to this point because we got comfortable.
Yeah.
Well, it's time to get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yes.
And start straightening that spine up a little bit and looking people in the eye and telling them, I see you, I know who you are, I don't support you. And in fact, I'm going to push back against you in every way possible until we start righting this ship.
That's right. Well, Bryan, thank you so much for your courage, for your service, for your unwavering commitment to the truth. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And I just appreciate your commitment, not just in the uniform, but in your community. So your story is proof that citizens can make a difference, and your leadership is a call to action for every one of our listeners today. I hope that you take some of this to heart, to not sit on the sidelines, but to really get involved. If today's episode fired you up, I'm really glad that it did. That means you still believe that your voice matters, because it does. Don't sit on the sidelines. Learn more about election security in your own county. Ask questions. Demand transparency, and most importantly, get involved. Remember to follow us on all of our social media channels, and if you like this content, be sure to consider making a contribution through our website, Arkansas First, and that's 1st.com. Until next time, I'm Kandi Cox, reminding you, freedom isn't passed down, it's defended. One voice, one vote, and one county at a time.